Hello and welcome back to Meat City Gaming. JD here with another achievement guide in Kronos Battle Worlds. And this time we're looking at Mission 5. And the missions just keep getting longer. This one again took over 4 hours to complete. And I really don't know how much you can do to streamline the process this time. I think I got it pretty well down my first run through. Certainly things you can do better, but this one's just going to take a while. And the name of the game is Patience. If you've gotten this far, you now have an understanding of how these units work. It's all about getting good matchups. You want to engage the enemy on your terms when you have favorable units. You want to take hits on your heavy tanks. You want to give hits where you can't receive a counterattack. Use your ranged units to attack their non-ranged units. Flank, attack with multiple friendly units on the same enemy all at once so they get increased damage. All the things you've been doing up until this point. The added twist to this mission is you get access to air units for the first time. So once again, we're going to do, I have the full playthrough in here with some editing. Of course, I've taken out some sections where I'm just moving vast numbers of units. I've sped up the gameplay to 4 and sometimes 8 times speed, or otherwise this would be a very, very long video that no one would want to watch. So what I'm going to do is go over the general strategy, lay out the goals in the first couple minutes, and then I'll give a little bit more in-depth strategy on how I tackled those goals, and that'll be in the first 5 or 10 minutes of the video, and then I'll let the rest of the video in there in case you want to see certain parts on how I approached the enemies or did certain things. So the other weird thing about this mission is you don't start with a primary objective. You just start with 2 secondary objectives, and they're to capture a harbor and to capture an airbase. So you, once again, like the last mission, have a completely amphibious assault force. You don't have any units on hard terrain. They're all loaded into ships. And so the first thing you need to do is make landfall, establish a beachhead, and then try to capture some buildings to set up your base of operations to then take over the rest of the things you need to do in order to win the scenario. Right away, I will say you have some heavy cargo ships, some heavy transports that are far to the north of the rest of your fleet. So hug the far west wall with them and get them to the south as quickly as you can. There are some submarines that are hidden. There are mines that are hidden. And if you lose one of these heavy cargo ships, there's also some enemy boats kind of between your heavy cargo ships and the rest of your force. Not directly there, but close. If you lose one of those, it's really going to hurt, and it's going to make your playthrough take a lot longer. So hug the west wall, get them to the south, and join them up with the rest of your fleet. And then you want to land your light units on the beach just to the east of where you start. Your heavy cargo ships need a dock or a harbor in order to unload, but your lights can land on the beach. So establish a beachhead. You have a bunch of missile cruisers, Barracuda missile cruisers. Use them to defend and provide long-range support fire for that light landing force. And also, you can bring extra units along with you, and I recommend if you have some veteran units, bring along some Barracudas with some extra range, because they'll certainly provide a lot of support early on here. So you want to establish that beachhead, and then complete the first 2 secondary objectives, which are to capture a harbor and an airbase. And there's multiple harbors and multiple air bases. You just need to get one of each. And once you've done that, you can then capture 3 bases, which is basically 3 headquarters that are kind of across the middle of the map. The objective says the 3 bases, I think, in the south. They're pretty much centrally located. They make a sort of a triangle. There's a left and a right that are a little bit farther south, and then one to the middle a little bit north of those 2. And then once you've done all 5 of those things, capture the harbor, the airbase, and the 3 bases, the primary goals unlock, and there's 2 of those. One is to defeat an enemy army, and that will be northwest of the final base, and the other is to capture the temple, which will be to the northeast of that final base that you capture. So you've landed your light forces, you're using your missile cruisers to provide support. You can push to the west, to the east. There's an air base there, which you can try to capture, and you'll unlock a whole lot of air units. There's like 8 planes in that first air base to the east, and you have to be careful because they're fragile. They also have fuel. So the way it works is you undock the airplane from the air base, you can get it out of the airbase, and then at the end of every turn, they lose 10 fuel. And you need to make sure that they're back in the airbase before they run out of fuel or they'll crash. The units are very powerful. There are some bombers, some combined anti-air and anti-ground units, and then there's some gliders which don't have fuel, which are really valuable. I suggest making as many of those as you can and use them to support your vehicles, because a lot of enemy vehicles can't shoot the air targets, and the few that do, you'll be able to take out with your heavier units. Rush in, take them out with your tanks, take them out with your artillery, and then you can use the air units, the gliders and whatnot, to just pick apart anything that can't fire back. So there's the airbase to the west, and there's harbors to the north. So once you've established your beachhead, the problem is you can't get your light units up to the harbors because there's woods in the way and a heavy enemy fortification. So what I did is you have a number of the infantry units which can go through the woods. So go north of where you land, you can go through some woods and work your way to the harbors with relatively little resistance. And as long as you use your missile Barracuda boats to provide long-range support for the infantry, you'll be able to kind of march right in. Just use the missile boats to kind of create a little bit of a bubble for those guys. Capture the harbor, dock your heavy transports, unload your heavy units, and then you're good to go. Just like in the last mission, then you can start to roll through, advance, and approach the enemy fortifications at your leisure. And I have those engagements in the video to follow, so you can kind of see how I do it, where those fortifications are, what kind of units the enemy has there. They usually have some air defense, so you can't just blunder in there with some planes and take things out. You need to, use all your units. Use your tanks to get close to where the enemy defenses are. Then set up an artillery piece so that it can lob shells in there. The enemy will then reach out to engage you, and you'll be set up to counterattack, and you'll lose 1 or 2 units while they'll lose 5 or 6. And that's the kind of trade you need to make. Then you'll be able to clean up the remnants and move on to the next objective. So once you've taken the harbor and the airbase, then there are 3 headquarters that are kind of scattered in a triangle, like I said, slightly to the north. Take those one at a time, advance through with your forces, and then once you've taken the 3rd base, the 2 primary objectives unlock. First, to defeat the rest of the enemy army to the northwest. That's a very minor force of units. You can sweep them up very quickly. And then to capture the temple to the northeast. And once again, there's not many units defending that position either. One final tweak, you get access to 1 additional new unit in addition to the air units. It's a mobile repair unit, and it's kind of cool. It can follow your other units around, and it gets 2 actions per turn. And so one of those can be a move, and one of them can be a repair. Or if you're next to the unit you want to repair, you can do 2 repairs. So the unit does need to use resources to do the repair, so you need to make sure it's stocked with resources. But it's great to have. You don't need to take a unit that's been in the fighting, run it all the way back to one of your factories, dock it in there, and then repair it. You can just take this mobile unit out in the field with you, and if you have a tank that's getting beat up, pull it to the back lines, repair it, get it back up there again. So this is it's a pretty straightforward mission. I really didn't have too much trouble with this one. Again, given the intro to the game where they lay out how, there's so many easy games out there, and this one's going to be a hard one, and we're going to challenge you. This really wasn't too bad of a mission. Again, it's long because it's tedious, and you need to be patient, right? There are times where I sat for 5 turns in a row, and the only thing I did was let my artillery lob shells at the gun emplacement so that I wasn't taking damage on my units. You're definitely outnumbered, you have limited access to resources, so you need to be cautious. But if you know the mechanics, you take your time, and you approach these in a advantageous way, you'll get through it. So hopefully this helped you out. It'll save you a little bit of time. You'll know what to expect. If this was helpful, please feel free to leave a thumbs up or a like on the video. I do appreciate it. And I will see you in the next one. Thanks.